and Darianne Johnson is representing that organization. Welcome.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry if we were late. My name is Darianne Johnson. I brought two of my staff with me. I will let them introduce.
I'm Kayla Messel. I am a direct service provider at Domestic Violence.
I'm Heather Kelly, or Heather Ingman. I'm also a direct service provider and child advocate.
She just got married. She forgot her last name. All right. I've been employed at the Domestic Violence and Rape Crisis Center for 13 years, and I've been the director for the past 6. Our agency provides services to 8 counties, which encompasses about 10,002 square miles. The counties included in our service area are Adams, Billings, Bowman, Dunn, Golden Valley, Hettinger, Slope, and Stark. As I'm sure you are all aware, these counties have been impacted by the influx of people into the area to work in the energy-related jobs. People from all over the United States and also from other countries are coming to North Dakota to find a better life. They are coming partly because we have wonderful media attention saying that if they come here, they'll make huge money, their problems will be solved, and their life will be great. What they're not told is that there is limited, if any, available affordable housing, nor are they told that the cost of living here has increased dramatically. For us, families come here for many reasons. Sometimes they already have problems within their family systems, and they come here to start over. They think that by moving somewhere else, their problems will go away. These problems become much larger because they're living in a camper, or they're living in a tent, or they're living in their car. Violence erupts, and that's when they access our services. Because these people literally are coming from all over the world, many hours of our staff time has been spent trying to find interpreters for Spanish, French, Russian, Swahili, Ukrainian, and other victims that speak no English. Staff has worked with victims who are brought to the United States by men who abuse them and hold their immigration status over their heads, which keeps them then in the abusive situation. Staff has worked with human trafficking victims who are being forced to participate in the sex trade, as well as selling drugs and or taking the drugs themselves. All we can do at our agency is try to keep those victims safe until we can move them on to rehabilitation facilities in other states. When I began working in this field 13 years ago, it was possible to get families on their feet and self-sufficient in a very, very short amount of time. Now, with the lack of available affordable housing, it is nearly impossible for families to find housing, and many women and families who, whether they've lived in this area their entire life or just moved here, are finding themselves stuck in the abusive situations that they're in. Because most of the time, they absolutely have no place to go. Our shelter is full on a consistent basis, which means there are times that we cannot shelter families that need our help. Our shelter can house 18 people at one time, and that is no longer adequate as more and more people access our services. We've seen a huge, huge increase in mental health issues and drug and alcohol dependency in both the clients that we work with and the abusers. We don't have a mental health unit, nor do we have an inpatient, long-term facility treatment for drug and alcohol problems. Our Human Service Center is fabulous. They help us as much as they possibly can, but they are understaffed. And when our clients need counseling, many times we cannot get them in for a week, 2 weeks, sometimes even a month. My staff stands beside me. I worry about burnout of my staff as the community resources seem to become fewer and fewer, and more is added to our plates. The article that was in Sunday's Dickinson Press is an eye-opener for many people, I think. The economic impact of the oil is a wonderful thing. Nobody would would argue with that. However, the fact that people no longer feel safe here, the fact that the people who made this city what it is no longer want to retire here is a very sad reality. It's going to take a concerted effort on all of our parts to try and change that and to get things back on track. I would be remiss not to mention the wonderful supporters of our agency. They have supported us for many years and continue to do so. I have to thank the agencies who we work with on a daily basis. And I would also like to say many thanks to the Dickinson Police Department and the Dickinson Sheriff's Department, as I know they're understaffed, but they work very hard with us in the best interests of our clients. We appreciate your past and present support. My hope is that you hear the requests of the nonprofit agencies that follow our presentation, that you really listen. Please listen as we talk about the stress, the turnover of staff, the absolute hopelessness and helplessness that we feel at times because we can no longer find solutions. We, meaning the nonprofits and many other organizations, are the helping agencies for all of the people that are coming to this area, and also for the people that have lived here their entire life. Please help us to help them. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Would your associates care to comment at all?
I think Darianne kind of hit it on the
Can you step up to the mic, please? Thank you.
I think Darianne pretty much hit everything. I know she mentioned a lot about staff. You know, there's only 4 of us, and then we have our nighttime people, so it makes it really hard to do our job, but we do it, so.
Okay, thank you. Comments or questions by commissioners?
You said, Mr. President, if I could, you said you have 4 people, and then you have a night staff?
We have 4 daytime staff. We have house parents that are staff as well that cover the shelter from 11 p.m. at night to 8 a.m. in the morning. And then we have volunteer shifts from 5 to 8 at night and 8 to 11 at night.
Thank you.
Ms. Johnson, I'm trying to remember from last year, but I don't recall you talking about the impact, say, of people from other countries. Is this kind of a new phenomena this past year, or has it been there for longer than a year, but I'm maybe not remembering your comments from a year ago?
I think I'll let Heather talk about that because she has, for lack of better words, become our immigration specialist.
Okay.
I think to answer your question, over the last year, we've definitely seen a greater increase in it. I would say prior to that year, we had women and children coming to our city and were a lot more readily willing to go back to the country in which they came from. That's no longer the case. Seeing a lot of women coming here for that better life or better resources. So I'd say in the last year, significant impact on wanting to stay here versus go home would be the, I think, better way to word it.
Okay. And could you comment on the extent of the human trafficking issue that you're seeing, and maybe put it in kind of a historical setting?
The human trafficking we have just started seeing within the last 4 to 5 months. And we have been working closely with the FBI and BCI and law enforcement to try to find solutions for them. Putting a human trafficking victim into a shelter is not a great idea, just because the dynamics are so different than a domestic violence female or even a homeless family.
Okay. And then you mentioned in your testimony, in your comments, that I think your housing capacity is 418, and you turn people away. I mean, do you have a sense of what your capacity would have to be so that you wouldn't be turning people away, or you would just be, turning a handful away? I mean,
You know, we have this discussion on a regular basis, and I know we have this discussion also with other agencies. My fear is that however big it is built, it will be used. I think the extent of people living in their cars, in tents, doubled up in people's homes, all of those things, if they were able to have a place to stay of their own, I think it would probably be a surprisingly huge number.
So I gather the intensity of the issues that you've been facing over the years, we haven't reached a peak and started to decline, that the intensity is still growing.
Mhm.
Do you feel like it is accelerating?
I do. I feel that, I think in my personal opinion, professional opinion, in Dickinson, North Dakota, we have always been able to find a solution for people. Working together as agencies or as the agency ourselves, we've always been able to find solutions. And now we are coming upon problems that we have no idea where to go, who to turn to, or how to even get an answer. And it's causing a lot of burnout. I've been here for 13 years, longer than these two. The faces in the meetings that I go to are changing because people are not able to withstand the stress of the jobs that they're expected to do.
Okay.
Karen, you have four full-time day staff. How much staff do you have to run the whole facility 24/7?
That again goes back to, we have now 2 house parents that
Mm.
do the 8 p.m. to 11, or 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. shifts.
Okay.
Then we have volunteers
Mhm.
that staff the shelter from 5 to 8 at night and 8 to 11 at night. And we've gone from a volunteer staff of 20 to a volunteer staff of 6. So what we've done now is we've started to pay them for shifts after a certain number, just so that we can have somebody cover the shelter.
Okay.
In the short term, what's the big picture answer? I suppose the answer is to get rid of the ills. That probably isn't going to happen. So is the short-term answer more shelter, more space, more of a footprint for you?
I think the answer is more shelter would help, more staff would help. Those are probably 2 of the hardest things that can happen short term. I'm not sure. I feel like there needs to be people sitting down together trying to figure out ways to make this work. I'm also a member of the Homeless Coalition. We've been working for years to try to figure out a solution and are just touching the tip of the iceberg. And Joe will be here this afternoon to talk to you about that. I honestly don't know.
But if you had triple the space or quadruple, you'd use it, I'm sure.
Absolutely.
Is that going to solve a lot more problems? Is it
If we have
directly
triple,
proportionate?
quadruple the space, then we'll need to triple,
Understand.
quadruple the staff.
Yeah, I understand.
Which then it just kind of becomes a continuous circle.
Yeah.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, well, thank you for being here, and thank you for the work you do in our community.
Thank you.
Is there anyone here representing House of Manna? Okay, come to the podium, state your name.
Good afternoon. My name is Rayanne Keelan, and today I'm here to represent the House of Manna. I'm a board member at the House of Manna, and our president, Pat Severson, wasn't able to attend, so I got elected. Kind of like you guys, only it's a little easier job. House of Manna is here today to make a subsidy request to the Dickinson City Commission for this coming budget year, just like I think everybody is going to be who's serving those in our community who are at risk or in need. I think Darien laid out a really good platform to leave you depressed by the end of the day at some of what's happening in our community, quite honestly. For all of the good things, some of the things that are happening are not so good. The House of Manna started probably 20, 30 years ago and has had a long history of providing to those in need. The premise of those of us that sit on the board is if you have a need, we will try to help you, whether it's free clothing, food, furniture. We had somebody drop off a camper about a week ago, and somebody now has a new home. So we've become that portal where we're completely volunteer other than two part-time staff people who are paid for us. The problem we're running into is not unlike that at any of these other agencies, is that our numbers that we're serving is just outrageously insane. A couple of years ago when I came on the board, we were serving maybe 20,000 people a year. Last year we recorded in at about 44,000. This year, year to date, as of the 30th of June, we'd already seen 31,000 people through the center. So we're looking at a 60,000 person year. Absolutely unmanageable for us. We don't have the financial capacity to step up and continue to meet that need. Our operating budget runs around 60, 70,000 a year, so we're serving clients for $1.50 to $2 a head, if you want to look at it that way. And so we came here today, almost kind of almost a desperate attempt to try to help us bridge through till we can come up with some longer-term solution as how we can sustain this program in the community. We have a separate issue, which of course is our location, and we've had some preliminary conversation and continue to how we're going to address that. But today it's operational. It's how do we pay the bills, how do we keep the place open through the remainder or through the next year without completely depleting any resources that we have and finding ourselves as a board having no decisions about what to do with the residual left over of this nonprofit. I want to build a little bit on what Darien talked about with who we're really serving. We basically have three types of clients that are our primary users of the House of Manna. One of them are the long-term poor in our community, the people that we always think about that just really struggle and have come in because they don't have the basic essentials. The first wave that we saw, which was probably that 20 to 40,000 increase, was what I call the new poor in our community. It's the people who are suffering from what would be considered anywhere else a really good wage in a community where even at $15 an hour you can't afford to live and you can't afford to rent. So the person who used to be that average service level worker or that traditionally lower paid worker that had reasonable rents, reasonable housing, could still take care of their family's primary needs. A couple of years ago, I remember running into a little boy coming out of House of Manna who was excited because he did his school shopping there. And this was a mother who a year earlier would have been at rummage sales, stores watching sales, whatever, but no longer had the capacity to take care of things like clothing for her kids going to school. That's disarming in one point, that we have this new poor that have really emerged in our community, people that have always been good, hardworking people who just can't quite stretch it that far. So they come to the House of Manna to kind of bridge them that little bit extra that kind of gives them that relief in their personal budget to be able to afford their rent or whatever it takes to live in this community. The new poor that we're seeing are the people that are coming here in droves to find work. And I know that I'm sometimes known to embellish just slightly, but I'm not embellishing when I tell you that they're coming with the last tank of gas. The suitcase has got everything that they own in the trunk of the car. They've lost their homes, they've lost their jobs, they've lost their savings, their retirement is long gone. They have no credit, they have no work, they packed it up and headed up here in the hopes of something better. They get up here, they find out that they need clothing to go work, clothing beyond what they have, especially if you're out in the oil industry. They're finding that it's a little bit colder than they may have been familiar with, so all of a sudden their children might need a winter coat, something they've never had to buy before. They may need winter wear. They come without anything. They don't have a bed. They don't have blankets, pillows, towels. dishes, any of the core things. And if they are lucky enough not to be living in a tent, and they're even in a camper that they found at the House of Manna that somebody gave away, they don't have those basic essential things. So we're really seeing three different kinds of people, that traditional poor, the new poor, and the newly arrived immigrants to our community, if you want to call them that. So the demand has become almost unmanageable for us, and we're kind of at a point of crisis. So I got elected to come here and talk to you about articulating that need and hoping that we could beg a little of your attention to provide us some support trying to bridge serving these people in our community. I don't know what else to tell you. I'm not as prepared as some of your presenters, clearly. But I'd like to give you an opportunity to maybe ask questions as you consider our request that might be more helpful than me rambling on forever.
Thank you, Rayanne. Are there questions?
Brian,
Go
ahead.
I was just going to ask Rayanne, what relationship do you have with the ARC or other businesses, I'll call it, nonprofits that work in a similar area as yours?
The ARC is, from what I understand, another nonprofit that does have their ARC Outreach thrift store, and they sell to people at a reduced price, and then those funds are used to support their programming, which are usually targeted towards those with disabilities. So the money comes in through the ARC, or the arcade thrift shop, so to speak, and those people pay for the goods that they get there. Able just opened a thrift store this year, which is going gangbusters, which is interesting, which again is serving that, well, they serve anybody. Anybody goes to the ARC or to Able. And again, they charge for their goods. I think the difference is that we don't. We provide what you need when you need it, if we have it, and there's no. We do have some suggested donations on some things to kind of dissuade abuse. And some things do have value that, you know, even $5 makes a difference to keep it honest. We do a lot of, we've just worked more and more with Able on trading and sharing. If they have things that aren't selling, if we have things that probably have a little greater value than we're able to recover, we've been working more and more with them. So we do similar things. I think the difference is that we're free. And that's our model, Sean. That's our model. Our model is based on the idea if you have a need, we will be there to help give to you, not. And I think that it's interesting because even within that model, that, you know, the people that could go to the arcade are able, that $10 just isn't in their pocket. So then they come to us. Did that answer what you asked?
I kind of knew the answer. I just wanted everybody else to hear it from the public. And you also, I mean, you have anything from beds to clothing. I mean, it's a wide array of material.
We get beds, clothing, dishware, tires, batteries. We get dog food. We get, I mean, somebody dropped off a camper, really? We get appliances. We get, boy, you know, you name it, we get it. And we really try to, and you know, and just by the way, while I'm here, thank you, the city, because the dumpster you give us to haul away the junk that people won't go all the way out to the Baylor building with and drop off for us, because apparently that works better for them, even though our 80-year-old volunteers are hoisting it into the dumpster. That really is a big piece for us to have that service. But we do try to share back and forth where the needs are.
Okay. Mr. Jackson, you had a question?
I think my question was answered, but for the public, do you want to explain where your location is?
Our location is on East Villard, south of Come and Go, or south of Ladbury Funeral Home. We're tucked behind the trailer sales. I'm sure
Same location you've been in.
Same location
for many
we've been in
years.
forever. Now that is changing. That will change, but right now that's where we're at. We hope that changes.
Do you, are you receiving adequate number of contributions of goods to keep up with the demand? Because if you go from 40,000 people to 60,000 people that you're serving, I mean, it means people in our community have to be going through their excess, I guess, articles and things and donating them.
You know, Dennis, I couldn't tell you sir, I couldn't tell you if the tub was empty or full or what it was doing. I know that when it comes in, it goes back out. We don't track unfilled needs that are met. If you drive by there on a Sunday, you'll usually see a garage size full of furniture and boxes that are left, and I think the community's been generous in donating their goods. What we are seeing is a little bit less on the cash donation side, and that traditional poor, the working poor who are vested members of our community, even if they were really at risk, could throw a couple bucks in the collection box. We're not seeing that so much. You know, it's again, it's coming down to, I have $5 left, what am I going to do with it? And it's not coming to us. But I really couldn't tell you if we have unmet needs, because people come, we fill them up, they leave, the next day we come and there's as much stuff as was there the day before, and it's like little elves at night who drop stuff off, and you're thinking. The good thing is that people leaving or making changes are very charitable towards us. Whether it's meeting the need or not, I couldn't tell you.
Okay. Are there other comments or questions? Okay, and your request is for $20,000. And domestic violence and rape, what was their request for?
20,000 as well.
20,000 also, okay.
One more question for Rand. Do you guys take advantage, and I'm not going to get the terminology right here, but the Giving Day, the online...
Giving Hearts Day, absolutely.
Yes.
We were one of the first participants in the
Okay.
Impact Foundation's Giving Hearts, and we had a really good run the first year.
Good.
We raised about $7,500. We are United Way contributed. That's probably, and then whatever gifts we get from those that we serve. But yes, Giving Hearts Day has been a great gift for our community.
Good.
We plan to build on that. Okay, if you don't have any further questions, I'll keep you to your long afternoon ahead of you. I wish you the best of luck as you consider all of these requests.
Okay.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Rand.
Bye-bye.
Is there someone here from RSVP?
Good afternoon, gentlemen. I'm Rick Gordon. I'm the Dakota West RSVP coordinator. Mr. Bob Sivak is my advisory council president. And I'd just like to thank you for this opportunity and all the things you've done for RSVP in the past and hopefully continue. Just the short commercial part of what RSVP does. We provide critical needs through meaningful volunteer service. That's what the information, the thing that says. And what we do is we volunteer match. For any age in Dickinson, we focus on the elderly, over 55. I don't know if that's a synonymous term or not, elderly and over 55. But anyway, we focus on the over 55, but we do have a very strong under 55 too, because, and that's kind of they're going to turn 55 someday, and we'd like to keep them within that same habit. My office services 7 counties in the Southwest. So we are from Dunn County down to Hettinger, over to Beach, and down to Bowman. With our volunteers over 55, we have about just under 300, and we also have about another 300 just that are under 55. Well, last year, we logged about over 32,000 hours. And that the nationwide total is about $20 an hour is what a volunteer's hours are worth. I went $14 in town, and we would come up with about $500,000 that we invest in our area, in our local area, through volunteerism. All our volunteers are covered by supplemental insurance. So if one of you are going to go to volunteer at one of our functions and you slip on the ice outside of your home, you're covered. You have a car accident, there's a supplemental insurance. Okay, this goes beyond what, it doesn't cover everything, but it is a supplemental. So we do try to take care of our volunteers. As of July this year, RSVP has become the entire state of North Dakota. Devil's Lake was the only section of the state that we did not have as a total RSVP unit, which we're under now. So as of now, we are the only state in the country that is one state. Everybody else has a lot of piecemealing going on. And that leads to a lot of efficiency for us because our state director, Nancy Olson, she's a phenomenally gifted woman in a lot of areas, and she works very hard and keeps a great watch on everything from cost to the productivity from all of us. So we're in good hands with Nancy as far as the whole state goes. Performance measures, we are federally funded also through some grants through RSVP and foster grandparents. And with those reports comes a lot of responsibility and accountability. So we have to make numbers and make numbers work in accordance to our grant. RSVP, our newest endeavor is this last year we became the administrator to the food pantry. We take care of the workforce, which we did a lot of already, and also we take care of the statistical reporting, number of pounds, clients, things like that. We don't do the financing. That's the board, the pantry board has their own president and treasurer and everything, so we just do the statistical end of that. Some other things that we've taken on this year is Coats for Kids, the Angel Tree Project. The Angel Tree Project was something that I took on myself without asking, and it turned out it was okay, but we've had some, but the other one is places like the House of Manna, all the thrift stores in town. We supply a lot of volunteers. I can't imagine the job you have before you. I've been in this job less than a year, and I've learned more now than I probably have in the last 30 years about elderly and keeping them in their homes and the things that just volunteering does for people. And the agencies involved, at the blue sheet in your packet, we have I think there's 86 on there. They're all the lists of what we call stations. Stations are people that we place volunteers in. And hearing the House of Manna's needs, the Amen Pantry, all the needs that the city has at this time, it's overwhelming. And just for a little bit of good news, there's a lot of good people out doing a lot of good things, and that's where we come in. We are involved in a lot of those places, and our job is to kind of be the filler, put people in place for those people to do their jobs even better. I'll call on Bob now. Bob is the president of our advisory council, and I'll just let him add a few words also from a different perspective.
Thank you, Rick. Mayor Johnson, commissioners. I've been involved with the RSVP and RSVP Plus organization for several years now as a city representative, quite honestly, and it just shows their commitment to making sure that the community is involved through a wide base across the community. City government, the common citizen, business owners, the public and private mix that's on the advisory board. It shows also in how they want to provide their service to the community. It's not just focused in one area. It's focused across the face of the community and across the region. Has a positive and a tremendous impact, not just in Dickinson, but in the southwest region. One of the easiest ones, I guess, to use as an example is the Amen Food Pantry, and you've heard me report at a commission meeting on the impact the Amen Food Pantry has in the community. Any of the organizations that are listed on that blue sheet as sponsors, you may find volunteers in, and you will find RSVP volunteers in most of them. They're very good stewards of the money that you've chosen to allot to them on a yearly basis, and we would hope that our presentation would help you to reconsider and do the same thing again. Thank you.
Bob, specifically, Amen Food Pantry. So are you saying RSVP Mans
Yes, sir.
provides all the manpower for Amen Food Pantry?
Well, if not all, the majority of it.
There is a paid manager. Susie Kapelovitz is the manager, and she gets paid for the time she works at the and they pay RSVP a fee to do that. But as far as volunteers that actually work at the pantry, we supply all the workers.
And Rick, what about how do you how does an organization go about getting volunteers from RSVP? Is it simply a phone call saying we need 3 people for 3 weeks or next year or whatever?
I'll just use the example, the Badlands Mondac football game. Ben from the college called up and said, we need 8 ticket takers and 6 concession people and 6 gate watchers. He puts an order in for that. We call people who are on their applications, have said they would like to do whatever, and we call them up and we fill the order for them. And that's kind of how it is. The museum this last March said, we need volunteers at the machine shed again. And so we fill a morning and an afternoon shift 7 days a week for the 3 months of summer that the museum has that shed open. So.
Okay, and then what about recruiting your volunteers? You're just getting phone calls from somebody?
Well, that's where I come in. I go around to different nonprofit organizations. I go to meetings, give presentations, things like this. Hopefully, you all go out and talk about us a little bit. And we've with the influx of new people, I am kind of happy to say a lot of people from outside they'll come in and they'll say, I don't know anybody. I'd like to do something so I can get out and meet some people. So we do, it's word of mouth, but there's some recruiting that goes on.
Other comments or questions? And the amount of your request is $25,000?
Correct. That's the amount that RSVP's asked for in the past, and that's what we're asking this time also.
Okay. Anything else? All right. Well, appreciate you both being here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Next, we're going to hear from Sharon Kilzer and the Theodore Roosevelt Symposium. So, Ms. Kilzer.
Mayor Johnson, Commissioners, good afternoon. My name is Sharon Kilzer, and I'm the project manager for the Theodore Roosevelt Center at Dickinson State University. First, I'd like to thank you for your action last month, providing significant support for the new Theodore Roosevelt Presidential Library and Museum in our community. I'm confident this is a project that will be a hallmark of our community, of which we all will be very proud. And I want to thank you for the vision and having the vision and making the commitment to make it a reality. I also want to thank you for the past support that you've provided for the annual Theodore Roosevelt Symposium. This is one of the key events that has helped us to develop our reputation for excellence, and it's contributed greatly to our success so far. It's enabled us to provide a program of guest speakers and lively entertainment that serves not only our own community and region, but it also draws visitors and guests from around the country. And I will be asking for your continued support at the same level of funding, which is $20,000. To review last year's symposium, then, our theme was Theodore Roosevelt and American Culture. The majority of the participants, as always, were from North Dakota, but we did have 16 states represented among our guests. One of our speakers, Michael Cullinan, came in from the United Kingdom. He's an American. He's originally from New Jersey, but he's teaching in the UK. This year, for the symposium, we'll be bringing a speaker here from the Roosevelt Study Center in the Netherlands. So our reach is now international. We're very excited about that. A couple of our participant evaluations and comments that they gave us after the event last year. One said, "This was my first visit to North Dakota and learned it's a wonderful and special place. I hope to return. I enjoyed the event and my time in Dickinson greatly." And another participant said, "We've been visiting Medora each summer for 30 years. In recent years, we joined the Medora Foundation, and attending this symposium was a natural extension. We hope to attend more. We've always hoped that our efforts would become kind of a regional footprint of Theodore Roosevelt, and that we could collaborate and build on each other's efforts between Medora and Dickinson, and we're starting to see that happen." So these are the results of the symposium. In addition to the economic return, the money spent here by our guests, and now the recent state investment and your investment in the Theodore Roosevelt Center and its future, we continue to win friends and to garner goodwill for Dickinson and the region. This fall, the city is again among the symposium sponsors. I've given you the save the date card. Our theme is World War I and Theodore Roosevelt. We initially planned to extend the theme of Theodore Roosevelt and American culture, but this is the 100th anniversary of the outbreak of World War I, and TR was very involved in the early phases of the war, even long before the U.S. entered in. So we're going to be considering Roosevelt's strident calls for military preparedness and his family's participation in the war. Both the men and the women in the Roosevelt family were involved in World War I. And we're also going to look at North Dakota's early isolationism, followed by, after the U.S. entered the war, very high rates of military service, and try to examine that and explain that a little bit. So put it on your calendars. We hope you all will make time to be with us for at least a part of the symposium, September 25th to 27th. Registration will be available on the website just within a couple of days. So our request for 2015 is we're going to extend the Theodore Roosevelt and American culture theme, as we had hoped to do this year, but it got superseded by World War I. We'll be looking at TR and American political cartooning, TR and sport, particularly football. We think, again, this is a theme that will have wide appeal, not only within our community, but to others around the country. And as I close my remarks, I just want to express again our very sincere thanks to the City of Dickinson for supporting this event in the past. And I hope that that support continues. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Kilzer. Comments, questions? All right. Well, you did a good job. Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't see anybody else here, so we're probably running a little ahead of schedule.
We are a little, President Johnson, I have been trying to keep people updated as to their schedules and asking them to come early. Ms. Spear is on the way from Western Wellness and or Best Friends. Ms. Radikowski is running a little bit late and should be here shortly, and I also have contacted Mr. Keogh, and he should be on his way shortly as well.
Well, we'll recess for 5 minutes and then resume as soon as those folks arrive. We're going to hear from Chris Fair, and this is regarding Western Wellness. So, Ms. Fair.
Thank you, Mayor Johnson. Thank you, City Commissioners, for giving me the time and for also taking the time to hear about your Best Friends Mentoring Program and to consider our request for funding for the coming year. I also want to thank you for the current year's allocation of $5,000. That provided mentoring services for 6 at-risk youth in Dickinson. So those 6 children from Dickinson were each matched with a trained volunteer mentor who provided them some social skills training, companionship, role modeling, homework assistance, tutoring, and friendship. Besides the 6 youth that your contribution sponsored, we worked with an additional 78 children in 2003. So at the end of, just give you a little bit of history, at the end of 2012, as you know, we projected the budget shortfall for 2013. And right at the end of 2012, we also lost a key staff member. So we made the decision to temporarily suspend our tutoring services and that began January 1 of 2013. And that affected about 150 children who are now not receiving mentoring or tutoring services through the Best Friends Mentoring Program. The vast majority of those students are in elementary school in the Dickinson school systems. So the suspension of that program brings us to 57 matches so far this year, this calendar year. We will probably be in the 80s to close to 100 total again for this year by the time we get to the end of the calendar year. Okay, so all of these matches are managed right now by one program coordinator, where we used to have two. We currently have a waiting list of about 20 children and a waiting list of volunteers as well. On Thursday last week, a key staff person left Best Friends, left the state of North Dakota. We are now advertising to replace that individual. However, we know that we are not able to offer competitive wages with our community. So without that staff, our ability to maintain our current fundraising efforts is severely hampered. Our staff has shrunk to less than half of what we had 2 years ago. But however, we are still able to provide the quality mentoring program, not necessarily quantity. Quality is what's important. So at this point, halfway through the calendar year of 2014, we are projecting close to a break-even budget if our predictions for contributions are correct. But right now we're talking about 2015, and we're not really sure what's going to happen next year. But I'd like to give you a quick snapshot of what happened with Best Friends mentoring program in the past few years, if you want to look at those colored charts I just gave you. First, I refer to the top chart, which shows the efficiency of Best Friends mentoring program according to Brady Martz. We spent, in 2013, 8% of our budget on fundraising and administration, 92% on program. Average for a smaller nonprofit is about 25 to 30%. So, you know, we're all working really hard, I think that's what it tells you. The second chart there shows a number of matches and the amount of income. So you can see the dramatic increase from the grant funds on the far left, and then the dramatic drop in funding, and that dramatic drop correlates to the national recession, which, as you know, diverted funds away from social programs, and it also stressed many of the private funding sources. And you can also see how the increase in matches follows the funding increase. With the help of our community right here in Dickinson, Best Friends Mentoring Program was able to maintain that level of matches that we increased to all the way through to 2012. And then the third chart shows the total number of youth matched one-to-one with a caring mentor over the years. So investing in a prevention program such as Best Friends Mentoring Program will serve the city far into the future. More than 94% of the youth in our program improve their academic competency, their behavior, their attitude, and their social skills just in 1 year of being matched with a mentor. About 99% of the youth who have been served in our program graduate from high school. And you probably recall, usually I have some heartwarming story that I tell you about kids who started in second grade and they finally graduated. It's happening every year as our program has grown, and I've been at the program that long. I'm able to see those little second graders walk across the stage. And a lot of those kids probably or may not have graduated without some sort of an intervention like this. So when kids don't graduate from high school, they earn less money. National studies tell us that they're 8 times more likely to go to prison. Mentoring helps to prevent those youth from becoming statistics and also helps them to become contributing members of our community when they're adults. We are seeing an increase in our demand for mentoring services. We've made a number of cuts and staff reassignments over the years to increase our efficiency and to be able to continue to provide that quality service to the community. We have less funding, but we have about 130% increase in demand for services. We are requesting a city investment in our youth to ensure that mentoring services continue and that we can prevent some of the economic and educational challenges that these kids face. So with what we have requested for funding, you would be able to sponsor 18 children for mentoring, and that will help their future success. It will also be an impact that you can be proud of, and it will pay big dividends in our community's future. So I'd be happy to answer any questions you have. Thank you for the time.
Thank you, Ms. Fair. Comments or questions here?
Mr. President, Ms. Fair, you lost some federal funding. What dollar amount have you lost in the last couple of years?
Well, 180 some thousand a year. And that's what our community has brought forward to us. Our budget is right around 200,000 a year. Next year we'll probably be at 160, just because if you're going budget, we try to budget, even budget. We are not projecting we'll have $200,000.
You recoup some of it, but not all of it.
Oh, right, yeah. I mean, if you can remember back to when we had almost 10 staff people, and we were able to do many fundraising events, and we were recruiting 100 mentors or more a year. Now what we're doing is a child's application comes in the door, or a volunteer's application comes in the door, and we have to wait because we don't have the capacity within our staff to manage any more than we manage right now.
What is the average age of your mentor?
Our average age of our mentors, I'm going to say 20s. Yeah.
And the oldest age?
The oldest age is going to be 60s.
Okay, so there's
the youngest is about
room
16, 17.
for elderly people to come into your program. It's
Oh,
not
yeah.
just for a young person to be a mentor, but
Elderly.
elder people.
I'd say
Experience.
older active adults.
Gray-haired.
They don't even have to have gray hair. They can come on in.
The point being that it's when you think of mentoring, a lot of people think that it's for the younger person to be a mentor.
Something we're seeing that I think is interesting, those younger mentors are working probably 60 to 80 hours a week. Those 20-somethings, 30, I mean, those are who, a lot of those are the people who are coming to town. They have great hearts and they'll volunteer at an event, or they do help us out. But to have that consistent time to be a mentor is difficult. So we are seeing maybe that age is going to creep up a little bit, or down, because we're getting more and more juniors and seniors in high school who are volunteering. As you can imagine, though, that causes a constant turnover for the program because the students graduate. Some of them stay in the community here, but a great number move on to college elsewhere.
Thank you.
Other comments and questions?
Chris, tell us how you get referrals for the kids.
For the youth?
And then I expect you've probably seen an uptick in need the last couple years.
Yes. Last year when I did just a comparison, talking about the need first, the requests had increased about 140%. So since we're not actively seeking referrals, it's only up 130% as compared to 5 years ago when I added in this year. Children are referred to the program by a counselor at their school, or the school principal, or a teacher, or the parent, or it can be someone outside of the school, such as their grandparent, or if they're in private counseling. And that is someone who has determined that a child would benefit from a role model, from a positive adult in a positive adult in their lives, for whatever reason. You all know my husband was deployed, my son needed a mentor, and that was when he was third grade, at the end of third grade and into fourth grade. So he just graduated from high school. But there's many reasons that a child could need a mentor. And there are more and more kids in our program that are being raised by grandparents. We have a significant number, whereas it used to be unusual. Now it's quite usual. So the kids are referred to the program in that way. Someone has to determine that the child would benefit from a mentor, would benefit from the additional role modeling and the extra attention that a mentor would give them. But also the child has to want a mentor. Otherwise, it's, you know, not going to work out. And then as you were asking also about where do the mentors come from? Or what was your other question? I'm sorry. Did I get it?
I think you answered both.
Did I get it? Okay.
Other comments or questions?
I would bet that this is pretty much what you've heard all day long. That their social programs are pretty stressed, trying to meet the needs.
I would say that's been a consistent theme.
Yeah. Yeah. So I appreciate everything that the commissioners have done and that the city has done to help Best Friends. Just from even helping us with our Family Fun Day and putting a little road barricade down for us and those types of things. And I have to tell you, your staff is pretty proactive. I usually have a call at least a week or two ahead of time asking me, what do you need for Family Fun Day? Is it the same as last year? Because we're planning it out. And I think that's wonderful because it shows that they really do have a commitment to their community as well. So I appreciate that and appreciate the commission as well.
Well, thank you.
Thank you very much.
All
Anything else?
right, that's it.
Good. All right,
Yep.
thank you.
Next, we're going to hear from Public Transit, and representing them is Colleen Radikowski. So, Ms. Radikowski, welcome.
Good afternoon. You have our request for funding, and for the 2015 budget year, we're asking a little bit under $160,000 for the public transit and elder care meal program, and then $60,000 for the public transit taxi subsidy. On your form there, you have the past information of last year, or this current year's funding. The source of our funds comes from the elderly services under the sales tax, the 2.4% of the 1%. Last year, or this current year we're in right now, is where our funding came from. Short description, I'm asking for about a 10% increase on the public transit and elder care portion of the city sales tax, not the taxi subsidy. That amount is the same as this year. And basically because salaries, operating expenses, and vehicle costs. As well, and vehicle costs, also security. We're looking to input a security system on the building and then some security systems inside our vehicles as well. We just put in 2 of them on 2 new vehicles, and I'd like to have the rest of the fleet with security cameras. And that's for some of that increase. Also, that 10% is going to cover, we had a shortfall last year in our overall net income, and the brunt of it, a majority of it, was all under the meal program. So our meal program is costing us more to put on because as some of our staff are leaving or retiring, hiring new staff is a challenge, just like it is for everybody. But our meal program is costing more to do in some of the smaller sites because of raw food costs and salaries. So I'm actually having to take a look at some of the sites, and if there's I haven't wanted to close any sites, but this might be the year that I'm going to have to close down some of them. If there's even 4 people eating at a small site, I wanted to keep it open. It's 4 people we're helping with a nutritional meal, but it's just becoming financially impossible to keep going that route, and we had to make some hard decisions and looking at the sites that are not doing very well and possibly having to close them down. So as you know, we have 2 meal programs that you are funding with subsidy, and the nutritional meal program is across all 8 counties. The brunt of the meals are in Stark County, and it's a congregate meal site where the elderly over the age of 60 come to eat a meal. It's funded as well through the Older Americans Act with the State Department of Human Services. And in addition to congregate meal sites, we provide home-delivered meals. The home-delivered meals are for shut-ins, the elderly who qualify for that home-delivered meal. Because they're unable to drive, they're homebound. We deliver hot meals to those individuals through all the counties, and then we supplement them with frozen meals on the weekends as well. Public transit is stationed out of the Dickinson community here, is where we basically do our services. We have 2 routes to and from Bismarck twice a week, mostly taking people for medical appointments and treatments. And then we do surrounding communities if there's a driver available. Those are usually harder to do, and that's why we put a driver available. If somebody calls in, we have a driver open, we can go ahead and give that ride. We're the only entity in Dickinson that has handicapped accessibility, or as far as wheelchair use, we're the only ones that have that wheelchair, as well as Medicaid. We're a quality service provider for Medicaid, so people that are on Medicaid, that we get some reimbursement from the state from that. Other funding sources for us, in addition to the dollars that you guys have been providing, is NDDOT, the Human Service Department for the state, fair revenue, mill levy, contracts with various entities for our services, and then as well as fundraising. Just a couple comments I'd like to make. If you go to our profit and loss for 2013, you see that 14,000 shortfall. Last year took a turning point for us where we've had to make some decisions because of our economy and the challenges of hiring, salaries, the whole gamut with inflation, with prices, where we have to do some different things in order to make it work. And as I said, 23,000 of that really was the meal program that was down, and then Transit had a 9,000 profit, and meals had a 23,000 loss. And next on the next sheet, our balance sheet, just want to draw attention to two accounts. Under current assets, the 1151 and 52 is our savings. We have about 135,000 in savings at the end of the year. My personal goal has always been 300,000. I'm at least 3 months of expenses. I hit it one time, and I think the next month I had to borrow money for payroll. But we don't have a lot in savings, but I really do work hard because our salary is about 38,000 cost for salaries every 2 weeks, and between the money going with reimbursement with the state, sometimes we have to dig into that money until we get reimbursed from the state and federal dollars. And then the last sheet is our 1.6 budget projection for 2015. And I plugged in the numbers into this budget of our requests so that you can see the outcome. So any questions about our services or our subsidy request?
On your balance sheet, you have accounts receivable at $225,000. Is that primarily money that's like due you from the state?
Yes. Yep. What it would be probably here, the brunt of that would be, because this is the end of December, every quarter, end of every quarter, we apply for the reimbursement through DOT. So that's quarterly. So October, November, and December would be in here.
In there, and which would get paid to you sometime during the first quarter, I suppose.
Correct, January. And then the other, we get paid monthly. We get monthly reimbursement for the meals program through Human Services. And then quarterly for DOT. So that is the brunt of those accounts receivable.
And your checking account and savings account then is, if I understood your comments correctly, is really there for working capital. You're not saving up for a big project that you're going to spend money on.
Sometimes we need that local match. You know, if you recall, about a month ago, I came for some local match for a planned grant for planning a fixed route. Sometimes when we have a vehicle, we have to pay that 20% of the vehicle. So a vehicle might be 40,000, 55,000, depends if it's a van or a bus. Sometimes we might have local match dollars in there as well as a place to go when we have a shortfall waiting for the money to come from the state. Yes.
Did you say in your comments, I may have missed it, you know, roughly the amount of people you think you're serving with your various programs?
Oh, let's see if I know this by heart. Okay, I would say about 43,000 trips a year. And the meal program, if I'm correct, is about, I want to say 60,000 meals in the counties. I'm sorry, I don't know that one at the top of my head. I just looked at it, but didn't retain it. But I want to say about that.
Are you seeing any changes, this year versus 1 and 2 years ago in, for example, demand for services?
We are seeing a drop in both services.
You're seeing a drop?
Yes, we are. The drop in the meal program is dropping, but costs are going higher in order to put those meals out. A lot of the elderly, some have, of course, when the elderly pass away, that affects us. Challenge of getting the 60-year-olds to come in to eat the meals at the senior center are challenging. They are a different, the baby boomers are a little different to market to because of the needs that they want. They would rather have like 2 or 3 choices, eating a time frame between 2 to 3 hours, a little bit more linens. They'd like to see their volunteering to be more of like a project manager versus stuffing envelopes. So there's a little bit different. The state as a whole has been looking at marketing to the baby boomers to fill the funnel of the program. A lot of the elderly can't live here anymore, so we're finding a lot of people are moving out of state or going to where their children are, where they're closer to their families to help them. They're moving out because of congestion and just the changes of our town. So it's harder for them. They're on a fixed income to stay here. Public transit, I think some of the other taxi services that have come in town have picked up some of our riders, and which is great. That they're here, and we did cut down on the bar crowd. So we used to supply the Friday, Saturday bar crowd taxi service for many years when there wasn't other taxis in town but us. And now that we have some other entities and businesses providing that, we have stepped back from that. And we have also stepped back from 24-hour airport rides, so our airport rides are down. And that, once again, the other taxi services can fulfill those needs for us. We don't have to be open because we're the only entity. So.
You said your meal count is down the last year or two. What about compared to 5 years ago? It would still be above?
I would think it would be, 5 years ago was higher probably than now. I would think so, because back then, I would think so. The whole state as a whole has been seeing a drop in the meal program because of the elderly. The biggest drop is filling that funnel, when you're filling the funnel for how it's operating. I personally, I've been saying this for a couple years, when I go to the state meetings, we're actually going to one tomorrow, I think there's going to be a change in how the state is operating the Older Americans Act. It's very, very strict regulations on that meal. I've said this before, and I'm not shy to say it, I would probably bypass the Older American Act. If I had enough money, I would feed the elderly a meal that I know that they fully would enjoy and eat. Because of the strict regulations, sometimes we're providing a meal that they might not care for. And we have to follow those those requirements. Jan Ingen, our state director, has just resigned. She's moving back to Alaska, and she just went to a federal convention where she was sharing with them changes that we would like to see with the Older Americans Act. It's never been changed. It's been there since, I heard from since inception, and it's time to tweak it, make some changes. We're marketing to a whole different group. So I personally think that there's going to be some changes in how the meal program is ran because of the dynamics of it in today's world. So.
Ms. Rudikowski, talking about the city taxi or your taxi service versus some of the taxi services we have out there now, they are not on a level playing field. And in that I mean is, I don't think they're held to the same standards that your business is, okay? And to me, that's worrisome because I hear the complaints about some of the drivers out there. I see some of the liability exposures they have, and I don't think we're holding them to the same standards as our contractors. And I know that we have requested some information from other communities regarding how they handle the taxi service industry. So I know that we will be looking into that, and hopefully we can make it a little more fair, for everyone. Because my concern is that some of these people, some of those drivers have 4 or 5 people in their vehicles, and they do not have sufficient insurance or experience in driving that amount of people or that type of coverage. So I do know they're competing against you, and I think you mentioned last year, you thought it was kind of an unfair competition in that way.
Well, and we don't want to compete with private because we shouldn't compete with private. We're getting state dollars. So last time I was here, if we call for the subsidy, President Johnson said, are you going to pull back on on-demand? If the on-demand taxis, the privates were able to handle all of it and we weren't needed, definitely I would pull back. The challenge for us is I think we're still needed out there. There's still people needing our services in addition to sometimes the other taxis are out of town doing runs. There's nobody available there might not be anybody available for someone to ride. As far as what you're talking about, Mr. Steiner, we are doing background checks. We do training for a week or more. When a driver's ready, they go out. Safety's number one of our customers, employees, and vehicles. Number two is exceeding customer service. Drug and alcohol tests are done. I'm going to be having my first federal drug and alcohol audit, which I wasn't worried about because I run the ship as best I can, but it's been a massive amount of work getting ready. But we do that because we have in place we have a professional business in place so that we are handling complaints as best we can, and we're providing that safe, good customer service ride. So.
And again, that was the part I was trying to stress, that your operation, I'm not taking a knock on the other taxi cabs out there, but people know you're people that are driving, and they know that you do the checks and so on to make them a good qualified operator. So.
Thank you. And our biggest challenge is hiring and maintaining qualified staff. You know, that's we're seeing, I'm sure everybody in town is seeing, you know, you hire and we're seeing people are gone before we even get to a couple days of training sometimes. You know, they find something else or their life changes and we invest a lot of dollars and then they leave. I think one month I spent like $450 on background checks and none of them were there. But we do the drug and alcohol tests, we do the DOT physical, you know, we do everything that we can to orientate that employee, and then after we invest those dollars, a lot of times they leave, or after 2-3 months they're gone. That's probably the biggest challenge that I'm seeing in our staffing is the time we invest and then they're not there anymore. And so we do the best we can. So, and I'm so grateful. I say this every time, and it's just the truth. I'm so grateful for the City of Dickinson partnership and support and our state. I know I could not be here and our staff would not be here if it wasn't for the funding and the support that we have. Our partnership is wonderful, and it's not like that in some places. And I'm always glad to go around the state and talk about how great our partnership is and that we're all working together. So thank you so much for that. Any other questions?
Any other comments or questions? All right, thank you for being here.
Thanks.
Next, we're going to hear about the Dickinson City Band, and we have Bob Keel. And Mr. Keel, you're, I think, presenting on 2 different programs. Are you prepared to do both of them at one time?
It'll be a struggle, but yes.
You can, all right. Well, why don't we do that, and then you don't have to come back a second time. So the first one is the Dickinson City Band, and the second is going to be the Stark County Victim Witness Program. But we'll let you go ahead, so welcome.
Thank you. Well, Mr. Mayor and Commissioners, it's a pleasure to be here in this group of musicians to talk to you about City Band. And I probably said something like that last year, but I'm serious when I say that the band welcomes anyone. Well, you have to be able to play a little bit, but we really encourage people to participate, and we have folks that have been out of the loop for years and years and years, and they finally decide for some reason to get back into it, to pick up a horn, and they practice, and it's just fun. And so the welcome is out to you all. And Mr. Steiner, I know, just can hardly wait, but and again, thank you for the grant approved last year. We received that kind of late in the year, or well, early this spring, I guess, and And if you looked at our balance sheet, you know, that's the only reason we're on the plus side. Basically, year to year, we go, you know, from one year to the next, and we don't have any extra money. We have a fund. We have a little surplus that we can dip into if we have to, and we've had to once in a while just to pay some bills. We don't generate a lot of income, and we don't have a lot of expenses, but we did have a pretty good year, I thought. Kind of a surprise in the second, well, we kind of go in semesters, you might say, this first half, the second half, and the second half of the year, the band director at the college approached us about co-oping because they only had 8 students in their band. Really wasn't a very good band experience, so they played with us, and they came to rehearsals, these 8 students did, and the director came, and he played too. He was a phenomenal trumpet player and piano player, and he directed somewhat. And so we were able to sort of have an unusual concert this spring involving our group plus the DSU students. Now, will that continue? I don't know that. They have a different director this fall. So, but it worked out and just turned out to be a positive experience. I hope for the kids, because what they were missing was playing in a band. They really didn't have a band at the college, so we were it. So it was kind of fun, and we ended up with a pretty good-sized band on stage at May Hall. In fact, you couldn't have got many more folks up there. So we worked at promoting. We just met a couple nights or last week, and we're going to have a rehearsal starting in September, concert in late November, I believe. And that's what we try to do, is have a fall-winter concert and a spring concert. And our band involves participants from Dickinson, some from Hettinger. There's a doctor from Bowman that's been coming up, a couple from Killdeer. So it isn't just us, but we welcome whoever wants to play. And so you all recall years ago, the city band was subsidized by the city on a regular basis. And we're not asking for the tax that used to be levied, but we do appreciate that you considered us last year for the grant. And we've submitted a little bit lower request this year, partly because we got less than we applied for last time, and because we haven't even spent the money yet, actually. That's the real truth, is we haven't done that. But we plan to do that. We plan to do a little more for promotion advertising this fall. Our years never work out quite the same. We have a director, and for the moment it's my wife, and she works pretty reasonable in terms of price, but she's very demanding. She's tough. I think, Mr. Jackson, you would appreciate that. She's tough on us, makes me work. But we also don't know about the college, and you know, whether we can co-op with them, and whether we have to, what our financial involvement might be. This spring, the college acted some of the programs for us and assumed some of our expenses. Now, how that'll happen in the future, we don't know if it will. So we're always excited. Our biggest regret probably is that we just can't get organized for the summer to be part of the Rough Rider Days parade, at least on the dry days. We're happy, but we're sorry to miss that. But anyway, it's just a tough time to get organized in the summer. So I appreciate your help last year, and hope that you'll consider us on more or less of an annual basis for a very modest sum. I know you've talked bigger numbers today. They're very important programs, and so our request is rather modest by comparison. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Keel. Comments or questions regarding the band? Roughly how many members do you have?
Well, we actually combine now with the string program. This was essentially a college effort, and the college has sort of said, you're on your own, so my wife keeps them going with us, and what we do is she rehearses with them, and then with our band we combine for the concerts. Between those two, somewhere around 30 to 40. Now, with the college, we were approaching 50. So it varies a little bit. We're always looking for drummers. That seems to be one problem we have, but it's 40, give or take.
Okay, thank you. Other comments or questions?
I have a question. How many events, Mr. Keel,
we have 2 concerts, one in the fall, in November, let's say, and then one in April, May. And this last one was televised. They recorded from Consolidated, and it's on the air. So in case you missed the real thing, you could have seen this on tape.
So you compete with us then on channel?
It's tough, too. It's really, your tough competition.
Yeah, okay. Other comments or questions?
I was going to say, though, you know, I mean, we may be asking for the smallest amount of the whole day, but, you know, we could be the noisiest group, too. You know, we could bring the
Right.
whole band in and really assault you with noise.
Well, we'd love to hear them, but I don't know that would help your funding request, you know.
Well, depending on how we played, you know, but you're probably right.
So, all right, I don't think there are other comments or questions. You have a second organization that you're representing?
Well, I'm a poor substitute for Linda because I don't know anything in detail about the program. She told me she couldn't be here and would I just cover for her, and I said sure. And so all I've got is the sheet that you probably already have, but I can tell you that I think it's a great program. Every Thursday she's here. She's there because we have so many crimes where there are victims of some degree or the other. And she's there to tell me what's going on, because sometimes she's got a victim that says, you know, the victim doesn't want to see this guy. She doesn't want to have contact. Or she might say that she does want contact. We can drop the restraining order. Or sometimes it's about money. There's been damages and there's these restitutions. So she's here every week she can. I mean, there are obviously times that she doesn't, but she's here to relay information to me, because I don't always have that in the file, and I don't have the contact with the victims. And so I just know that, and she's kind of a third arm in the office. She comes around and stands around and tries to help a little bit in we have some very busy court days. But it's an important program. I mean, I know that, you know, victims of crimes don't often know who to talk to. And from our standpoint, I mean, we send to Linda if we have anything to say about it, because she's the one that can help them out, give them ideas, tell them where to go, what possible relief they can get. And so it's a very good program. I don't know anything about the money part of it, really. I just know that it's good for us. It's been very helpful to us, and I've seen her in her office in the courthouse. I mean, I know that she's busy. She's got a lot of Stark County cases to deal with as well. And we all know with the activity that's going. You know, what surprises me in a way about the crime situation is that there's so much fighting, so much disorderly conduct, so many simple assaults, and domestic violence situations. It's just crazy. I mean, there's a lot of people being hurt in some fashion by all of this stuff. And so there's a lot of folks out there that are victims, and you know, they often don't know who to talk to, and Linda's their friend. She's the one that helps them out. So it's a very important program, and you know, I don't know what funding was like in years past, but I certainly encourage some help because it's a good program.
So I gather by your comments, I mean, you see a growing need for this service in the environment that we're in.
Well, it seems like to me that there's just, you know, bit by bit we're picking up, and the disorderly conduct, the fighting, the drunken behavior is causing problems, and it's some of it is, you know, sometimes there are no victims. You know, two guys slug it out. Well, what are you going to do? But very often there's spouses and children or girlfriends involved, and they're the victims of this particular crime. So it looks like it's growing, yeah.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? The request is for $15,000. So Anything else here?
Well, thanks for considering it, and thanks for listening to me and letting me squeeze them both in. Appreciate it. Have a
Okay,
good day.
Thank you. Okay. Next, we'll hear from the Rough Rider Commission. Representing the Rough Rider Commission is Dwayne Wolf. And you'll have to introduce yourselves on Channel 19 here.
I'm Justin Olson with the Rough Rider Commission.
I'm Dwayne Wolf from the Rough Rider Commission.
We're here to talk about the fireworks. Asking for some funding for the fireworks for 2015, I guess it would be.
Yes, for 2015. Part of the reason for the funding at this point is we make our commitment to the fireworks vendor usually about between August 15th and September 15th. As they get ready to make their purchases, I suppose, to go over across to buy the fireworks. So, we're just putting in, it's a part of an event that we've supported over all the years. I know last year and the year before we've gotten some funding. It's become a major funding expense for us on the Rough Rider Days event. We feel probably in most communities, the cities are basically supporting the fireworks program for their 4th of July event.
Yeah, and we believe the city used to do it before. Now we do it.
Right.
Correct?
The city many years ago did it, and basically we just tied it in with our events. For some unknown reason, all of a sudden it became part of the Rough Rider Commission portfolio, and we just kind of taken care of it over all these years for probably like I want to say last 20 years. And any support we can get on that certainly helps the burden of costs from our committee. We take full responsibility getting the pyrotechs. We take full responsibility putting them up in rooms for that night. There's a few more costs than just the purchases of the fireworks that are involved.
Yeah, I believe last year the fireworks amount was $15,000, which we paid the vendor for that. So, and there is other costs that go along with that besides just what the vendor's charging us for. So, and of course we'd like the whole amount.
Okay. Other comments or questions here?
Maybe I missed that. That's what you spend is 15,000?
Yes. Plus, we do have some additional costs for motel rooms for our pyrotechs. As they come in the night before, they set up. It takes them about, I would say, 6 to 8 hours to set that up, because they're up there right away that morning to get things set up. We're lucky enough to have the ability to still shoot them off at the college grounds. I wish we could control the other events that go around us, but that's another issue.
And the Rough Rider Commission we're the ones that clean up after that also, in that grounds, not the parking lot so much, but there. And that's another time, another thing for everyone to do along with it. So there's more that goes into it than just 45 minutes of fireworks, I guess.
So in the information you've submitted, the 222,000 of expenditures for the Rough Rider Commission, that includes?
That includes all our events.
The fireworks?
Including the fireworks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about, I see 116,000 worth of sponsorships?
Those are the sponsorships that our committee members, we basically go around our committee and we're knocking on doors trying to get money to make this event continue.
So those are business sponsorships?
Business sponsorships, and they keep growing. Fortunately, I think the community has a lot of support for us, and they want to keep this event going. Without that, we would be we wouldn't be operating.
You're looking at your balance sheet. You have a fair amount of cash in your checking account and also in an investment account. Can you tell us, are you saving for a particular project or?
Not in anything like that. As we went to a number of Association Affairs meetings, they usually say you'd like to see 1 to 2 years of funding if you hit a disaster year. And that would allow you to be able to have startup funds to get going with the next year. A lot of our things have to be paid prior to the event.
Correct.
So our gate sales, we don't have that until the event. Thankfully, we get a lot of our sponsorship money early.
I guess another way we could look at this, or that the taxpayer could look at this, is that you're really requesting $15,000 for Rough Rider days.
Actually, I would say we're requesting it for fireworks.
Okay.
You know, during Rough Rider days, and that's only because we run that event over the 4th of July. If we didn't have Rough Rider days over the 4th of July, we would not have fireworks. If we'd have our event scheduled on, let's say, July 19th through this weekend, you know, we obviously wouldn't have no fireworks expense.
Okay.
Other comments or questions? So summarize, the request is for $15,000, and that's pretty much what you spend with the fireworks vendor annually.
That's what we spend, that is the base amount to the fireworks vendor.
Okay.
We still have some additional costs.
Right. Okay. Okay. Anything else you want to point out to us?
I don't know, I
think
thought
so.
Rough Rider Days went pretty smooth this year. I did hear on the meeting the other day, they had some other events that go on outside of our events.
Yeah.
We try to keep everything running as efficiently and smoothly as possible. We appreciate any support you guys can give us, that's our bottom line.
Okay. All right. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Okay, the next presentation is from Sunrise Youth Bureau, and Jerry Mayer is here representing Sunrise Youth Bureau.
Good afternoon, President, Commissioners. My name is Jerry Mayer, Director of Sunrise Youth Bureau, and this is Holly Prowse. We're coming here today to request the same amount that we received last year from the city in 2014, which was $12,500, and we're again requesting that same amount this year, or for 2015. The reason we kind of need the same amount is we have a couple issues that have come up for our 2015 budget that have kind of affected the way we're doing business, and one is most important one is I'm getting ready to retire, and this is going to be the new director of the Sunrise Youth Bureau, Holly Prowse. So she's taken over in my place, and one of the things that we have to do is find a replacement for her position over there. And when I was the director of the Sunrise Youth Bureau, I did not require that I had medical care because I'm retired Air Force, so I didn't take any medical insurance out of the Youth Bureau. The new position we're hiring to replace Holly's position, we're going to have to offer some type of medical plan, which obviously affects our budget quite a bit. So that's one of the issues we're looking at that we need some additional funding for, is we're going to have to do that. The second issue we have is in 2015, we no longer have a contract to do diversion services up in Williston. We were taking care of the youth up in Williston, and they were giving us about $5,500 a year to take care of the kids up there. We no longer have that contract, so that's going to obviously affect our bottom line. We no longer have that $5,500 income coming in anymore. So those two issues right there is going to affect us about in the $8,000, $9,000 range. So it's really going to affect how we need some additional funding to keep those things going that we have. As far as the services we go, the numbers we have are about the same. We're not seeing an increase or decrease in the number of kids we see. We're kind of staying steady. Our diversion has been remaining constant. The number of kids we see, we refer from juvenile court, parents, etc., has been about the same. Our education program is booming. Obviously, that's where we go out to the schools and do education presentations, and that's a position we're currently trying to fill right now. So that's kind of growing a little bit, and that's been keeping steady, so we're doing that. But the biggest asset program we have for the city, obviously, is the housing of our youth 24 hours a day. We do take kids in 24 hours a day, weekends, nights, evenings. It doesn't make any difference. When local law enforcement has a youth that they need to be placed somewhere because they were drinking or they're runaways or the parents don't want them anymore, whatever the issue may be, they do place them over at the Youth Bureau. We do require that our staff come in within 15 minutes so we can get the police officers back on call, back on the street, so they don't have to house these youth. So we're the only agency in Southwest North Dakota that currently provides this service. So if we're not available, we're not around, I'll be honest with you, I don't know what the police would do with the kids they pick up at night or on the weekends. I have no clue what they would do with them. They'd have to find some other place to keep them. So we need this service. It does benefit the city, it does benefit local law enforcement, and it does benefit everybody, the youth and the families in this area. So we thank you for our support. I can answer any questions, or the new director, Holly, can answer any questions that you might have for us. We'd like, I said, to keep the same amount that we had last year. We appreciate what you've been giving us. And on a personal note, as I get ready to do my farewell tour, that's what I kind of feel like, because we are in the process of going to all the counties, all of the people that support us right now, and asking for additional funding. So, you know, as I do this, I just want to say thanks for the support you've given me over the last couple of years, and since the Youth Bureau was created, I really appreciate it, and I hope you'll continue to do that for Holly.
Okay.
Hey, Jerry, how long have you been with Sunrise?
I started it in 2002, is when I actually started it.
I want to thank you for your...
Oh, well, you're welcome. I really enjoyed it. It's just time for me to move on.
What led you to start the Youth Bureau?
There was no Youth Bureau in 2002, and what we were looking at, there was a committee that was established, and basically juvenile court had requested it, and they had requested that another agency be started to help deal with, because there was a heavy influx of youth that were getting in trouble, and basically it was a juvenile court request. So we established a committee and decided this is what we needed to do. So basically it was based on the fact that we needed another place to take care of kids other than going to court. So basically, that's how it all started.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Comments or questions here? Well, good luck with whatever you're going to do new.
I haven't got a clue yet.
You haven't a clue.
You might see me at Walmart greeting the customers that come in.
and Holly, we certainly wish you the best in your new position, and
thank you.
Hopefully, you know, you'll be able to find an able replacement for your old position. So.
Yeah, we're having a real difficult time right now finding workers, like everybody else is, obviously.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So if someone actually hears this presentation, they're watching and says, you know, I'd like to get involved with a program like that, because I imagine even though you're compensated, in a way, you're kind of volunteering too, because you probably don't get paid quite what really are a level commensurate with the responsibilities and time put into the job. I mean, what should they do if someone's watching, they're interested? Is there a telephone number or that they call, or?
Yep, just Sunrise Youth Bureau, and the phone number is 483-9498.
Okay, so if they're interested, they can, and
Sure.
Sunrise Youth Bureau is in the phone book? And
Right.
They can pick up an application. We're on West Ballard.
Okay, so,
Yeah.
well, good.
We would appreciate that, because
Yeah.
like everybody else, we're kind of hurting for staff right now.
Well, we have a lot of new people coming to town virtually every week, and there might be someone that has a background or an interest in this kind of work and would like to help out the community, and so this would be an excellent way for them to do it. So,
Great, thank you.
Great, thank you.
okay.
Thank you.
Anything else here? All right, thank
Okay,
you
thank
for
you.
being here. Next, we'll hear from the Southwest Homeless Shelter, and Joe Warner is representing that organization.
Hello, Commissioners. This is Joe Warner here. You know, I think most of you have seen me up here before. But what we had requested now this time around was for $25,000. If you read into the handout that was there. And the reason we're asking for a different direction this time here is because we have a lot of things in our organizations that are pending. And for us to get to direct care was getting to be more of a drudgery and trying to get there to actually do what we needed to do. So that's where we're going to ask for a little bit of help at. The rest of it is we're going to work at trying to run a few donations and get ourselves to a position of just exactly where we're going. And where we are going now, we have started breaking up into work groups to exactly handle what we're going to do. We've taken the direct, and it has become pretty apparent that we need to have a permanent solution to what this is. So that means a structure of some sort, someplace where every social service program that we have has an opportunity to have an open door for somebody to lay their head down. And that is a much larger focus than we have probably had in the past. and it's something we directly just have to do. It's became apparent. It's apparent to just about everybody's other programs. Darien got the same issues. We all have same problems. But to get to that point, though, is we needed to break ourselves up to a little bit and get more professional at who's doing the work. So we're looking at going into contractors that are willing to come in and say, what does it take to do this? Are the buildings that's available, instead of having to come and hire somebody to do this, can we take their volunteer employment, go in there, survey these buildings, see what it's going to take for us to make a shelter out of this? And as you know, in Dickinson, as it's growing, that's a difficult thing because there's really nothing that's opening up. So we're either looking at new or we're looking at something that's dilapidated. So that become an issue. But we do have people that are willing to step up to that. We do have contractors that are saying, give us a chance here and we can see where we can go. So we've got that part working with. We also have the social service programs that are out there, and this is where this money is going to be directed to. The $5,000 we're looking for, part of that 25, is for ancillary things. We have issues where the person really isn't homeless, they just don't have any identification, or they have no means of getting there. That seems kind of strange to most of us because I wouldn't leave without a driver's license or some form of something to move to a different place. But it happens. It also happens that we have drivers that people can drive. They can't drive or license in this state because they can't get insurance. They haven't got the things. So we have an insurance company that allows us to come in, give us a monthly retainer, and we can get them insurance for them to drive. But they need a little bit of cash to do that. And it's kind of minute things that get them a job and it gets them working, and it seems to be very successful at that point to do that, and it's something we've done in the past. We're asking $20,000 just for direct help, and most of the things that have come about now, looking at the surveys from the community actions and social services, we're starting to get a few issues with women and children in this town here that really need to be addressed to take care of them. Make sure that they have a house on there, make sure that they have some direction in their life and to help them out. We can't allow them to, obviously in the wintertime, live in a tent city or live in a car somewhere else and get into our school systems and do everything else. They're going to need some help doing that. So that's our first priority. And I believe I have that in one of the handouts that we have that I put in there, just what our priority line is. And it's women and children, obviously, is the first one. The second one is women themselves. A lot of them are coming up here unprepared for the atmosphere that's here. The job market is, it's here, but someplace to lay down for a while is difficult for people that don't have any money. We have a great economy, but it's for people that are coming here, it's a bit out of range for them, and they really can't help themselves, especially women and the children part of the program. So that's where we're asking $20,000 to get us to that, to directly help them when we're short of cash and be able to move on. We're also going to go into fundraising. We had one event fairly successful for the amount of labor that was put into it. We had one of our members had an idea and she went forward with it, and she did raise within probably a 2-week period, she raised about $6,000 for us. Now that was just one idea that somebody took off with, so we believe it was kind of a light. It gave us something to look forward to. So we're going to continue on funding from the private sector, but we just need a shore up to get us going and be able to guarantee that we're going to be able to do something at that point. And I guess another thing we done last time we were here, we were looking to get a 501c3, which we have received. That was a 2.5-year process of being lost, and actually we had to get the Senator Heidi Heitkamp's office involved so they could keep on finding our stuff. We kept on presenting it and they keep on saying it was lost. So I don't know if they considered us Tea Party or what, I'm not sure. But we did have issue with that, but it did come across with a little bit of help and a little bit of being stubborn enough to go there and finish it out. So it literally took us at least 2 years to get that, and we did receive that in there. So now we can receive funding that are tax deductible and working with that. So that's pretty much where we're at. We have I do have the, and I'm sure you're aware of the numbers that the churches have put through it, and I think you've had copies of that. I send another one to reiterate that the work that they're doing is towards the men. But when you look at these numbers, though, you see success in there. And we plan on putting that beyond the point. When you look at the amount of guests that they had and the amount of stays that they had, so somewheres after 13 days, somebody was getting paid and they were moving on, or things were getting figured out. So that means you're working with a program that gets them into the workforce and asking them and almost being persistent that they do. If you're coming here for a job, we're going to help you find one. We're going to help you along, but it's not that it's just a place to lay down. You are going to have to prove to us that for the reason you're here is what you're going to go to. So that's why we have our partners, unemployment offices, social services. They're all in our decision group. That's in there. And that's the decision that we went across. If you haven't got a job in a certain period of time, we're going to start questioning you why. And we're going to, either you're going to move on or you're going to have a reason why you haven't. So we do have some pretty stringent rules that are written into the programs that we don't become a society of, or we don't build a structure that just enables. They're going to have to step up to something and try and take care of themselves. If they prove themselves, we're going to move you along and help you out. So, is there any questions that we would?
Mr. Warner, so in providing a place for evening shelter, would you be using some of this money then, for example, to rent a room, pay for a room rental, that kind of thing? 'Cause, I mean, you don't have a facility right now,
Right.
correct? Yeah,
And that's really the only other options that we have had. We have been looking at maybe a permanent, the one thing that does fray a little bit is that we don't have solid numbers for that, so we don't know really how many men. We're hoping that, or families that we have. If it is women and children, that's a little more difficult program to work with, and that's going to take probably a motel or somebody to get them into a place where they can shower, take care of themselves, get themselves. So we want to get them to where the social service system, we can collect them, put them in one spot so they're not out there.
There really isn't another alternative
No,
to
there
a
isn't.
shelter, is there? I mean, it's a motel room or nothing, I guess.
Or nothing.
Yeah.
And for them, the expense of that is probably, some of them come up, they have a few dollars, but they don't have enough. Maybe we can subsidize. But it'll be looked at as an individual case of where we're going to go and help them out best we can with the least amount of dollars that we can. You look at the system that we have here, we're all used to working short cash. So we're not going to be out there just offering it to everything that comes across. If you've got a few dollars and we can help you, fine. There might even be an instance where we can keep somebody in their own apartment for a little while. If it becomes a little bit that they need a little cash to keep themselves, but they're going to have to prove that's going to be an instant. But that happens here, and it's unfortunate, but that's one of the things that we're starting to see and look at. But our goal is to make sure that that section is not out on the streets, because number one, it's not safe for them out there. It's not healthy for the children. It's not a good spot for them. And so it's a goal. Other than that, covering the whole works. We have other opportunities with male or single individuals. There are motels. We are negotiating with some of the other systems around that house people, to see what they can do for us. So the contacts have been made out there. It's just right now it's the finances to be able to follow through and make this winter a little bit more pleasant for some of those that can't do it, or having issues.
Are there questions or comments here from commissioners? I know I heard you say that you don't have numbers, but you're in a better position than any of us. Can you comment at all, give us your opinion regarding what you think the numbers could be or might be regarding homelessness in our community?
I think it exceeds our imagination. Yeah, but we would think it'd be, you look at just the males alone that made the criteria in the church base was 64 guests that they had last year. Those are those that passed the criteria, which is really quite stringent in the church system. So you look at 64 there, and how many of them have passed up on that either didn't take the option or couldn't pass the criteria to get there. And you're looking at the community action system, and they have them daily that they turn away and refuse to write out the survey to get into it because they knew they couldn't make it through that. And if that's a daily thing, we're looking probably, I guess, to give you a solid number, but I would say we're looking at 100 plus, easily, in the city that's around here. But getting a handle on them is very difficult. They're elusive. They know they're out there. I would think the ones that probably have the bigger part of vision of them might be your local law enforcement. They probably would see them more than we would.
Okay.
But us to grab onto the numbers is difficult. What we would like to be able to get to a point someday is your officers find them, bring them to us and get them into something. And hopefully we can, if we all work together, we can make it better. Can we cure it? I mean, this thing is so fluid, that's an impossible thing to do. But we certainly can hope that somebody doesn't get hurt over this. And that is the industry that's here, that's bringing all this to happen here. People have a misconception when they come out here that's work, but that's hard work. And it's something that they're not prepared for. They're not prepared for our climate. They're not prepared for the amount of work that's here and the amount of hours that come into that. So there's a lot to play here. And the professionalism that it takes to be out there is another thing they don't count on. They keep on saying, come here. But to work out there, there's an awful lot of expertise out in that field. And just like every field, they need to be trained. And if you're not going to be a client or a employee that's going to stay, they may not want you. So they spent their money to get up here, they're stuck. They got to find some way to get back or be able to get into some other system that's better that fits their thing. And we need those too. We all need employees. We all need something. And we have a lot of experts coming up here that are disillusioned with their jobs, and they want to try something different. But when they look back at it, they find out that the one that they're trained for is still their best option, and we need them, and you just have to get them there. And that's where our employment office and our counselors get them to that.
Okay. Anybody else have something? All right, Mr. Warner, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Well, I think we go from one presentation on homelessness to another one representing the Dickinson Churches United for the Homeless is Dale Hansen. So, Mr. Hansen, welcome.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me here. I'm representing the Dickinson Churches United for the Homeless. I hope you've had a chance to look at the application. We are asking for $25,000, which is an amount that we anticipate will be our operating expenses for the next season. We depend totally on donations that we receive from the churches and from individuals, and we have no way of estimating what future donations we are going to receive. Running the homeless program is just a lot more work and more complicated than meets the eye. I know we can go like this for another year or two, but we have to have a permanent shelter and an administrator and a dependable source of funds. If that doesn't happen, I doubt that we can keep going because we're burning out our volunteers. Right now, we have two possibilities for help. I attended a meeting last week sponsored by the Bush Foundation, and they are planning on issuing a lot of grants in western North Dakota. And we could be eligible for one of these homeless grant if the Homeless Coalition so decides to apply for it. In addition, several of us met with a representative from a construction company who's interested in helping us acquire a permanent shelter. But future meetings will tell us, where this goes. Personally, I feel like there's some momentum in the city, to get this done. I guess I'd just like to open it up for questions if you have any. I might just make a comment on the financial statement that we gave you. We just received a couple of days ago $4,500 that's not listed under assets from someone from Tennessee who just found out about it on the internet and decided this was a good cause. I think she had some connection a long time ago with Dickinson, but that was kind of a nice gift. As far as some of our expenses that we have listed here, we have one executive director that we paid $8,500 to last year, and that's extremely low for the amount of hours and time that was put in there. So I feel that that's a low figure. We also, late in the season, provided shower vouchers for these homeless people. We made a deal with the rec center for $3.50 a shower, and we tried to see that the guys would have 2 showers a week. If they didn't take those showers, it gets a little bit cozy in there night after night. So we thought that was well worth it, but we didn't get that started till, it must have only been 6 weeks left, so we'd like to continue that. Additional expenses, last year the hospital did the laundry for us. This year that doesn't look like that's going to happen, so we anticipate probably $2,000 to $3,000 in laundry costs. So I think that, $25,000 would be a fairly close estimate as far as our operating costs. And I think it would take some of the burden off the churches. Some of the churches gave, a fair amount of money. Do you have any questions?
Dr. Hanson, I think, if I recall correctly, you don't operate this shelter 12 months out of the year. You operate it essentially over the colder months. You might tell us about that. And then I know last year was really your first full year of doing this. The year before it was a get started year and kind of a partial year. Can you tell us about the first full year? What kind of workload you had there, and
okay, we operated from November through March, and I've got just some brief statistics here. I can kind of give you an idea. We operated 135 days. We had 804 total beds occupied during that time. An average stay of 13 days. Average guests per night was 6. The heaviest month was January, when we had 9 guests per night. We had 17 guests that exceeded the 15-day limit. We try to keep them to 15 days if we can, because we want them out working and being able to earn enough money to find their own place. We had 2 guests that spent 60 nights and 1 guest that spent 90 nights. As far as volunteers, we had 810 volunteer shifts. We had 200 volunteers listed on the volunteer roster. Had 174 bus driver shifts, 15 site coordinators, and we have a board of about 14 members. Towards the end of last year, ECAB came to town and they donated their services where they would bus them in to and from the shelter. We're hoping they'll do that again this year because that would certainly save us a lot of costs. We had almost $5,000 worth of busing costs last year. But we have about 5,000 total volunteer hours that people have put in. It's a lot of hours. People coming, some shifts start at 9 at night, stay to 1:30 in the morning, and then the next shift comes in, well, 1:30 to 6, and then some of those people go home and then go to work. Some of them that retired, like me, it's a little easier, because then we can go home, and go to bed. But, we have a lot of people that just can't work that into their schedule if they're working. And not all of the 200 volunteers work. Some of them just get trained and go on the list, but then when you call, they say, well, I can't make it, or I can't make it. And so you get, towards the end of the year, you get down to just a handful, and it gets a little tough for some of them. But we'd like to keep the program going as long as we can. If we could see the light at the end of the tunnel of some type of permanent shelter, that would be the best one, where we don't have to keep moving mattresses every week, all these supplies in a trailer, one church to the next church, the next church. Just keep rotating all the time. Every Sunday after church, you have 4 or 5 people. You got to load this trailer, take it to the next church, and then they set up, and then the next week the same thing, and just keep rotating and do that for 5 months. It's a little hard, but we can go another year or two. But if it looks like we're not going to be able to accomplish the permanent route, I don't know how long people will keep up the enthusiasm. But we got a great bunch of churches, great pastors who are really passionate about this program. Regular board meetings, we're incorporated, bylaws. So if you have any questions, other than that, I guess.
Well, thank you. Are there comments or questions here? I think there are several themes that have shown through this afternoon from our speakers. But one theme that I think comes through very loud and clear is we have a lot of concerned citizens in our city who are volunteering and doing a lot of work, a lot of good work, whether it's with the youth or the homeless or those that have been abused. We've got a lot of good work going. I think another theme, though, is we have fewer volunteers. People are very busy here in this community. We have fewer volunteers, and our volunteers, and it's not just our volunteers too, it'd be our paid staff too, who are working very hard and becoming very tired. I think that has been well communicated this afternoon to us.
Well, as I said earlier, I'm kind of enthused about the possibility of the Bush Foundation grant. They give grants anywhere from $500 to $500,000. When we were at the meeting, she sounded quite enthused that we could maybe qualify for something like that. Not the churches, but the Homeless Coalition, because they're a 501c.
Yep.
And the other thing is the conversation that I've had a few days ago with a construction company that seems sincere. I mean, it sounds like they would really like to work with us and with the city and the planning people to see if something could be worked out. So we'll just have to wait. Wheels turn slow on these things.
Unfortunately, it seems to be the case. Okay. Well, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, commissioners, that completes the presentations. I'd certainly open it up for your comments. Before we adjourn, I know the staff is going to take this information and they'll come back to us at budget time with their recommendations. But we certainly would invite your comments now.
Mr. President, this meeting is always a humbling meeting for not only myself, but I'm sure some of you gentlemen. And I think just rest assured that the city's going to do the most we can, on your applications, and because this is really the only time we hear from you people. I mean, throughout the year, maybe once or twice, but when you sit here for 3 hours today, and everyone comes up and tells us some aspect of what's happening in the community that that number one affects the children, women, and some males out there. It's humbling, and I know everybody here wants to do the most we can, so I want to thank everybody for coming here today.
Thank you, Commissioner Steiner. Anyone else wish to comment?
Mr. President, we had 12 presentations and 4 had to do with a homeless issue, 4 of the 12. I think that's kind of significant. I know I debate with myself, and maybe some of you do too, about government involvement in things like this. And there are times that when I look at federal involvement, it seems a mess oftentimes. But I think at the local level, it's really a different thing. We can really put our hands on these organizations, and we know the people, we know what's happening, and I'd like to see us on most of these things that are really humanitarian things. I'd like to see us try to be a little more involved financially than we have been. I did ask Mr. Kessel to, if he could, just back up and give us a summary of budget aspects of this. And I don't know what you've looked at, Mr. Kessel, but the amount of money we've put into these programs in the past, maybe in total, how long we've been doing it, where it's coming from, what the revenue source is, some of those kinds of things. So if you don't mind, I'd like to hear just a couple minutes about that.
Certainly, Commissioner Jackson and the rest of the commissioners. I did go back till 2009. I did not go back to the inception of the program. We have given about $282,000 back to the communities programs that have come before us. It averages about $47,000 a year. Ironically, that's very similar to the other 2 grant programs that we do provide in the Southwest Regional Grant Program and the Senior Citizens Grant Program. For those programs, we do 1% of the 1%, which has equated to roughly $50,000 a year. So this has been close. Now that's obviously changed as our sales tax collections have risen over the last few years. When you take out the taxi and or public transit portion of the requests that you've heard, in our numbers have vacillated wildly. In 2009, we provided $63,000, 2010, $31,000, 2011, $51,500, 2012, $39,250, 2013, $47,000, 2014, $50,250. So they have gone they've varied quite a bit. Also, our requests have varied quite a bit. 2012, we had just under $150,000 in requests. In 2013, we only had $86,000 in requests. But in 2014, we had just under $120,000, and this year we have just under $200,000. I believe that to be the largest amount of requests that we've ever had. In 2010, we changed so that the funding source for this program is property tax revenue. Prior to that, it was sales tax revenue. I don't recall the rationale behind that. We may put sales tax into the general fund, but I haven't been able to trace that back yet. There are 2 organizations that are not on the list this year that have been funded in the past, and those are Arts on the Prairie and Southwest Community Service. Southwest Community Service is now those tasks are being provided by the City of Dickinson. We have taken over that program, and we are providing that service to the surrounding counties, including our own. Arts on the Prairie, from what I understand, had a fairly significant federal grant a few years ago. They have spent that grant down and have decided to cease operations. I believe Commissioner Oltmans, if he chooses, could maybe elaborate on those details more than I. We've also had some newcomers to our list. The House of Manna is a newcomer to the list. Also, Churches United is another newcomer to our list. They have come and gone. We've had several that additionally have Sunrise Youth Bureau, for instance, is a rather recent newcomer to our list, as is the band. Just in terms of some further background on some of the issues that came up this evening, you did hear Mr. Keogh talk about the band being eligible for mills. They are. They have a 4-mill eligibility if the City Commission chose to fund them that way. Ironically, the governor had put together a task force this year to look at mill consolidation and property taxes. That mill levy does go away specifically for bands. It still allows cities to fund bands. It just removes the 4 mills that are specifically allocated for bands. I would also like to mention that the subsidy that is requested by public transit and elder care does not include the building in which we own that they occupy. So we do provide them with utilities and other services in the building that they occupy. And also, Commissioner Steiner mentioned a taxi cab ordinance. We did pull together, I want to thank Ms. Binstock. She pulled together ordinances that exist in Fargo, Grand Forks, and Williston. Williston, because they just passed a taxi ordinance. I've coalesced those into a single document that I think will work for our area, and given that material to Mr. Coling. So I think you're going to see a presentation in the near future with regard to revision to our taxi cab ordinances, which also may mean that public transit could get out of that service industry, get out of that business completely, and rely on the private providers. Now, that is a system that we have had in the past. It didn't necessarily work all that well. We only had one provider, and public transit did take over those services about 2009, 2010 area. So we've been down that path. So I'm not sure what the future will hold. But that's a different story. So those are kind of some of the numbers that I did a little bit of research on. I have had communications with the House of Manna, with Churches United, with the Amen Food Pantry, and I know they're all looking for facilities. They all, in fact, so is domestic violence. And so I've been trying to work with them as best we can in locating either land that they could build on or a building that they could be housed in. So definitely a lot of needs today. Any questions?
I think the, all these can be funded out of the general fund. Not all of them can be funded out of some of our other revenues. But we do have, there is a little bit of flexibility. When you mention the public transit and the Meals on Wheels program, we've interpreted that as primarily servicing the elderly, and so we can use some of the original 1% sales tax to fund that. When you have the Rough Rider Commission come in and talk about fireworks, that's the Rough Rider Commission's putting on an event that attracts visitors to Dickinson. You can use your hospitality tax money there. The same is true with the Theodore Roosevelt Symposium. That's attracting visitors to Dickinson. You can fund with hospitality money, but everything else is pretty much a general fund obligation. And the single largest source of income coming into the general fund has typically been local property taxes. Now, that's changing a little bit because this current year that we're in, if I remember the numbers correctly, I think we're somewhere between $1.3 and $1.4 million of oil impact money that we've moved into the general fund, essentially to fund any deficits in the general fund. I'm thinking that this coming year, this 2015, we have to look at funding to a greater extent than we've done in the past these programs that are dealing with the homelessness, the violence, the youth in the community, that these issues are all being amplified by the impact of oil. And to say that we can only go so far because we don't want to increase property taxes above a certain limit, I don't know that we can say that anymore. I think, I'm not saying that we would increase the property taxes, but what I'm saying is we may have to defer more of the oil impact money into the general fund and less in, for projects. And what we really need to do, what we've been doing for a greater part of the past year, is work closely with the state department heads, the state elected officials, and the legislature in educating them about really what the extent of the impacts are on the community. I mean, it's not just in the infrastructure, but it's in the social aspects of the community too. And I think it's always a challenge to convince the legislative body, because so many of them live where life is still pretty much the same as it was 5 years ago and 10 years ago. Whereas those of us who live in the Bakken, whether it's up in the greater Williston area or it's down here in the greater Dickinson area, know that life is very different from just a handful of years ago. And we are dealing with issues that, 5, 6 years ago you didn't think you'd have to deal with. So I think it's going to behoove us to move a little more oil impact money into that general fund and do a better job of funding these needs. And that's probably the main alternative. I'm not going to say the only alternative, but the big alternative, the main alternative we have, is to bring oil impact money more to bear on these social needs. Mr. Kessel.
What I've heard from Commissioner Jackson and from President Johnson is for the staff, when we make our recommendations, to be maybe a little more lenient than we have in the past. Does that ring true for the rest of the commissioners? This isn't an easy process.
Yeah, and to piggyback on those conversations, the one thing that's hard to quantify, but it's there, every dollar that we spend on these programs actually saves us money in other areas, whether it's through our police force or other community services. It's an investment that we're making in our community, and I think it comes back to us multiple fold, because if we didn't have these volunteer organizations taking on the responsibility, the need is still there and we'd have to address it in a different manner. So,
as evidenced by the Southwest Community Service Program.
exactly.
I see at least a couple of these that I think could be candidates for hospitality tax. I see at least a couple that I think sales tax, the senior citizen part of things. And I think there's more that maybe a portion. In other words, if we give some group $10,000, if we want to try to leverage it a little bit, maybe a quarter or half of that can come from some of those other sources.
And I probably should have been more clear, because we are doing exactly as President Johnson has mentioned. The TR Symposium, the Rough Rider Commission funds do come out of the hospitality tax. I just gave you the preponderance of the funding. So. Okay, well, thank you for your input. I appreciate that.
Any other comments by commissioners? Okay, I know we have a regular city commission meeting that will start in an hour, 4:30. Of course, you're free to come and go, but I think Mrs. Binstock has arranged for some snacks if you need something to snack on before we start our next meeting. I'm anticipating a 2.5, 3-hour commission meeting, so.
Can we hold you to that?
I hope that's all it is. But. So, is there anything else? Would there be a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. The motion carries.